Survival games have exploded over the past few years. Steam charts are filled with all kinds of examples, including classic survival horror games and new hardcore survival sims. So today, I'm going to tell you about the 25 best open-world survival games on PC to make your search easier. State of Decay 2 is a third-person action game where you get a chance to lead a group of survivors. Instead of one main character, the production offers over a dozen characters, each with their own biography, skills, and traits, between whom you can freely switch. Together they build and develop their own hideout and gather resources necessary for survival. Your character finds himself defenseless and naked on an uncharted island, and your task is to survive for as long as possible in the hostile environment. In order to remain alive, you must hunt and gather raw materials, which can be used to craft weapons and various tools necessary for your existence. You can develop your character by learning new skills that will prove very useful for your survival. Some of them even allow you to tame dinosaurs and make them your personal mounts. Among Trees is reminiscent of the dozens of other survival games that have flooded the PC gaming market in recent years. The action is observed from the first-person perspective. The status of the player's character is described by several indicators, such as health and hunger, which change over time and depend on the situation in which you find yourself. The game takes place in a forest far from any civilization. At your disposal is a small wooden house that you can expand, as well as a set of tools and basic supplies that will allow you to survive for a long time. The Forest is a first-person survival horror. The player assumes the role of a plane crash survivor. The protagonist wakes up at the wreckage and, just like Robinson Crusoe, is trying to survive by building shelter and seeking food. Soon it turns out that the survivor is not alone on the island. The jungle is inhabited by a tribe of mutant cannibals. The game starts in the relatively quiet center of the procedurally generated land. Although you may feel moderately safe there, the area is not very rich in natural resources. You need resources to produce an ever better arsenal and stronger armor, to build various structures, such as fortresses or posts, and to produce food for your character. Raft throws you and your friends into an epic oceanic adventure. Your task is mostly to gather resources and food, upgrade your raft, and craft useful tools, which is often made more difficult by marine predators. Thanks to the crafting system and resources gained from gathering floating trash and objects found on the sea bottom or on small islands, the raft eventually becomes a full-fledged base, and the protagonist earns increasingly advanced tools. Scum takes place in a fictional reality where people crave thrills and unusual entertainment. To satisfy its viewers' needs, the Tech One station created a brutal show called Scum, in which prisoners fight for their lives as well as sponsors and fans' favor. The first season took place in the closed area of Alcatraz, but in the second, it was decided that the contestants would have more room to maneuver on the Bunny Duquesne Island. Pathologic takes you to a small town where the inhabitants begin to die from a strange disease called Sand Plague, which is caused by a mysterious villain. The virus spreads quickly. It affects the entire nervous and circulatory systems of its victims, causing irreversible paralysis of the body and mind. In order to fight the epidemic, local authorities hire an experienced physician, an inquisitor, and a military commander, the latter of whom is to destroy the town if all else fails. Conan Exiles is set in the fictional universe of Conan the Barbarian. You assume the role of an outcast who crosses dangerous wastelands. Although the plot is just an excuse for the complex game mechanics, you gradually get acquainted with the rich history of this world, which remained hidden in the ancient ruins. Prehistoric civilizations left their marks here in the form of books, as well as different inscriptions describing various events from the past. The game takes place in the near future, after the nuclear war of 2034 led to the almost complete annihilation of human civilization. Many of the survivors were infected with a virus that kills within 7 days of infection and then turns its carriers into zombies. You assume the role of a member of a group of survivors trying to get by in the fictional American county of Navesgain. The game is distinguished by its huge open world. You must fight for survival, but your main adversary is not hunger or cold, but other players and characters who roam the world and whose main goal is to send you to death. After starting the game, you spawn in a random location in the world with only a rock and a few bandages. Your first goal should be to find shelter, gather wood to build your cabin, and light a fire, granting you much needed light and heat. The game takes place in a fictional world inspired by old adventure novels like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. Numerous monsters inhabit the salt waters of the ocean, and at the bottom you can find the remains of futuristic buildings and ships. You assume the role of the captain of a futuristic underwater vessel and are tasked with exploring the depths. The game tells the story of pilot William Mackenzie, who survived a geomagnetic storm that caused all electronic devices to shut down. Access to water and food is becoming increasingly difficult. Roads are no longer safe, and if that was not enough, a severe winter is coming. Your goal is to survive the apocalypse. In Icarus, you assume the role of an astronaut in space. You're on a space station orbiting an alien planet. Your task is to meet the basic needs of the controlled character: hunger, oxygen, and thirst, while avoiding the death that can be carried by the local game. In addition to this, you must also fulfill the objectives of the missions assigned to you. No Man's Sky is set in a giant galaxy made up of over 18 trillion celestial bodies. You play as an explorer whose task is to reach the center and discover what is there. It's not easy because you start your journey on a randomly selected planet at the edge of the star system. Of course, you are not alone in space. You can meet representatives of various races, both on the planets and on board huge stations as well as in space. The game takes place in a rather classic fantasy realm known as Arai. Arai is filled with magic and bloodthirsty monsters. This world is controlled by 4 main factions, and you must join one of them. Each faction offers different adventures, a separate story plot, and unique character development paths. The biggest group is called the Blue Chamber Collective, and it consists of numerous smaller clans connected only by their bonds to their families. It costs you nothing to play Unturned, but this isn't some slapped-together free-to-play title. Its creator, a teenager, has released scores of updates to the zombie-based survival sandbox since 2014, which makes it easy to see why it's been downloaded by millions of players since its initial release. Despite Unturned's blocky visuals, it contains deep and satisfying crafting, skill, and survival systems. Plus, there's a massive and exuberant community surrounding it. Miscreated is an online third-person sandbox game with a strong focus on survival. The story takes place in 2089, sometime after 2 nuclear wars nearly exterminated the human race. You have to survive in this post-apocalyptic open world inhabited by cannibal mutants and bandits. Struggle through changing seasons to build a base, develop technology, and gear up in the hostile environment. Defend yourself from wildlife, the elements, and AI hunters who also build bases in the world. Progress your base technology for advanced item crafting and upgrades. Farm crops, raise small animals, harvest and refine resources to rise in dominance in the world. You assume the role of the sole survivor of a plane crash, who is desperately trying to stay alive on one of the uninhabited islands in the Pacific Ocean. To delay the unavoidable, you are forced to carefully manage your limited resources, which need to be acquired either by exploring the vast and rich but dangerous underwater world, or by scavenging whatever you can find on the island itself. As in the previous installment, you begin your adventure in Dragon Quest Builders 2 by creating a character that you will later lead into battle. The game is played from a third-person perspective, and your efforts are focused on gathering resources and using the protagonist's abilities to create items, different structures, strongholds, or even entire cities. Green Hell is a first-person game. Your main task is to gather food and water for the protagonist, or he won't live long. You must also learn how to build shelters, light bonfires, fish and hunt, as well as use various resources to craft items and traps. You can also try farming. Everything that increases your chances of survival is good. Kenshi takes place in a reality that combines post-apocalyptic themes and Oriental influences. The game features only a single-player mode. You can control a single character, or up to 50 characters simultaneously. The characters don't have to remain close to each other. If you wish, you can send them to various distant locations. The game world is gigantic and features 400 square kilometers of areas. Don't Starve is an uncompromising wilderness survival game full of science and magic. You play as Wilson, an intrepid gentleman scientist who has been trapped by a demon and transported to a mysterious wilderness world. Wilson must learn to use the environment and its inhabitants if he ever hopes to escape and find his way home. Enter an unexplored world full of strange creatures, dangers, and surprises. V Rising takes you on a journey to the fantastic Gothic world. You play as a vampire whose dream, lasting hundreds of years, came to an end. Now the protagonist is trying to regain his strength and build a real empire, which will be feared by the people living in this dark land and the monsters swarming in the wilderness, as well as other vampires. This is my list of the best open-world survival games on PC. If you have something to add, feel free to leave any comments here. If you liked this video, share it with your friends and subscribe to my channel.